Hello, welcome to the vlog that's not a vlog. And whilst these videos are normally about us and our project and what we do, we're all about giving back to our scene too. And alongside promoters, fans, people that fly for gigs, some of the people that do the most for our scene are the presenters of podcasters and radio shows, who obviously help up and coming bands get their first play or help push our scene into new heights. And so that's exactly what we're doing this week. Rather than Spotlight being us and our project, I decided to turn to four of my buddies that present ska podcasts and radio shows and grill them on the things they do, what got them into it, and their sort of top picks for bands coming up, and just a bit of a chat. So it's a long one, it's a good hour of chat. I have not really edited it down. I did sort of toy with the idea of doing so, but I kind of wanted it to go out as it was. So just a little tidy up in general. We did film it a couple of months ago, so there might be a couple of bits that seem more relevant knowing that. And also it was a really warm evening when we did it, and my MacBook fan was trying to do its best impression of a jet plane taking off, so excuse that in the audio. But anyway, let's get back to past Andy and see what we're up to. So what's up, guys?
How's it going?
How's it going?
Hello.
So for
Hello. Morning.
Yes. So we've got UK, America, and Australia represented here. Beefy is currently at breakfast o'clock.
Yeah,
Nice
it's early morning in Melbourne here, so I had not great on a Sunday morning, but we've just been in lockdown, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, all the days are kind of as one. So what we thought we'd do with this one is, like, these guys have podcasts and radio shows that kind of throw the spotlight on bands. You've all been really helpful when I released the album, so massive thanks once again for that. And you've helped so many other bands kind of be seen. So I thought it'd be really fun and kind of nice to sort of turn the tables and throw the spotlight back at you guys, because that doesn't really happen. I thought it'd be nice for you guys to talk about what got you started, what bands you guys are digging, what kind of music you'd recommend, and any advice to people coming up, you know, through the ranks that want to do podcasts rather than be in bands and things like that, or want to be on the radio and, you know, be on that side of things. I thought it'd be kind of fun and a bit of an experiment. So, yeah. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves and what you do?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm Matt. I co-host on the Upbeat podcast with RJ. We talk about ska music every week. Most weeks, we occasionally take a week off because, you know, life. But yeah, that's what we do.
I'm RJ Phoenix. I do I co-host on the Upbeat with Matt. We also interview a lot of bands on that show. It's a lot of fun. And I do 23 Minutes of Ska, which is kind of a rolling mixtape. I try my damnedest not to repeat songs. It's something I've worked up into going weekly over a couple of years, and it's been going for over 10 years now. So every Thursday, a little 23-minute mixtape. And that's what I do. I love it.
Okay, since I almost interrupted, I'll go next. I'm Chris. I host Ska Punk International. So I started it here because I'm here in the U.S., and it's primarily supposed to be focused on ska and punk bands from around the globe, but sometimes it's U.S. bands, and that's because as the audience has grown, I've got about 50% U.S. and 50% around the globe, and so sometimes they're like, hey, I want to hear from, you know, for example, yesterday, The Best of the Worst is the episode I put out, and there was a lot of demand from that from Mexico, for example. And so, you know, it's turned into a little bit of a hybrid, but I put out interview episodes and also kind of sort of like the 23-min mixtape episodes too. So it's a little bit of a hybrid show. I started doing 2 a week, and that was a lot of work. So now it's kind of 1 a week and occasionally a mixtape episode.
So from my point of view, I'm probably a little bit different. I'm Beefy, by the way. I'm based in Melbourne. I actually do a live show, which is a 2-hour ska show with Beefy. But then I whip it into 2 1-hour podcasts. I've actually done a third podcast every now and again where we throw a bit of light on some older stuff. But my area is just become focusing on new stuff, really, and throwing in some of the old traditional and two-tone and everything else, because there's just so much new music out there and people want to get their music heard. And I've kind of prioritized getting new bands and new tunes, new releases out there ahead of some of the older stuff, which is probably to my detriment. But yeah, it's a live show. It's been going, I think actually 4 years this week, I think, live on a station down here in Melbourne. So I think it gets syndicated as well. I'm never too sure what goes on, but yeah, the downloads are really good. But it's great to have to actually do a live show. So it's a 2-hour mixtape.
It's really good fun.
Yeah, it's a fun show too. I enjoy it, Beefy. Yeah, I mean, I kind of started to fall into only doing more newer bands because I don't like to repeat myself. Been doing this for 10 years. I've went through all the good 90s stuff that everybody knows, so I'm not playing Real Big Fish on the show hardly at all anymore unless they put something new out. If I play something from the 90s, it's some small Midwestern band that nobody remembered that I just finally dug out the CD. You know, it's like I'm mostly trying to keep, I really try to keep the last 5 years, if at all possible, as far as music that I chose for 23, just because it's like, there's so much, you're right, there's so much great new music out, like our fine host here made, that I just want to promote that and get those bands well known too.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really, really trying to do new stuff, but sometimes it's, for me, like, oh, you guys don't really know Pantheon Rococo? Like, I'm going to play some Pantheon Rococo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But most of the time, I'm, like, going into my episode trying to say, like, this new album is out or these songs have come out in the last 2 weeks or whatever. Because right now, there's just so much happening. Like, honestly, like, you could do, like, an episode every day, probably. Like, there's so much music.
Especially now.
They're really good coming out.
From my point of view as well, is I try and be as diverse as possible. So it doesn't matter whether you sing in Italian or Spanish or I even put a Welsh band on this week. I discovered a ska band that's singing Welsh. I could not believe it. This is kind of the first time I'd ever heard it. And it's like, why create barriers? You know, you can't just do English speaking or anything else, or even instrumentals and stuff like that. But yeah, the more the merrier, and the more diverse, the better. I find at the moment is I had people when I first kind of started saying, "Oh, you don't play enough Madness, you don't play enough specials." It's like, well, I kind of do, but we've heard all that stuff. You know, there is so much more and different different styles out there, and I probably am a punk rocker from old school days, and ska punk kind of fits in that hole. I mean, but why shouldn't we on ska shows play the Clash and Barstool Preachers and those two bands that kind of embrace everything?
For sure. Yeah. I think it's really important as well, because it can be, like you say, there's plenty of shows that play, you know, Madness and stuff and the sort of established acts. And there's lots of great shows like all of you guys have that help bands out that are surfacing like us. And there's many, many other bands that are coming up through the ranks. And there's quite a few sort of articles that appear online that kind of cover the same set of bands all the time. And I mean, it's great that the genre gets coverage for sure. It only opens the door for everyone, but it can get a bit monotonous when you sort of see, like, I can think of one thing where there's been a list by the same sort of group, and it's the same bands each list. The list titles just changed, and I think it's really important that all the other bands get a chance to just have a little snippet of like airtime or, you know, a little bit of publicity to help them on their way, because it's hard. It's the great thing is there's so much new music now, especially after COVID. Like the creativity's kind of gone into overdrive, but that means there's even more fish to kind of feed in the sea, you know. Are there any kind of up and coming bands that probably have had no play yet that you guys would recommend on your radar?
Yeah, I definitely have some, if that's cool. If I go first. So there's this band that hit me up on TikTok from Mexico, the Sober Vials. They only have one song out, but it is sick. It's so good. It's really cool. It's kind of like two-tone vibe, maybe a little more like Toaster's Third Wave, but it's got some like really cool like extra percussion in it. The hook is sick. Like, it's really, really good. Another one from Mexico, Girls Go Ska. They only have like, I think 3 songs out, but they are doing an LP later this year. Actually, I realize I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. I'm sure it's fine. I don't think that's a secret.
I'm pretty sure they put it out there because they sent me that new single, so I'm sure they said there's an LP coming.
Yeah. So I think it should be fine. They're cool. And then let's see, Mason's Party from Japan. Whenever people are talking about Japan, they don't ever get talked about. They have only like 300 listeners on like Spotify. They should have like way more. They're really, really good.
Awesome.
I don't know. I feel like Redeemin doesn't get enough discussion.
Yeah.
Like, I've been thinking a lot about Skacore just because the Best the Worst thing yesterday.
Sure.
And on all the lists, like Brooklyn Vegan, for example, whenever they're talking about like heavy bands, they never talk about things like Redeemin or Beat the Red Light, and that bums me out. Like that single they put out is so good. Their album, when it comes out later this year, is going to blow everyone nuts off.
Yeah. No, for real.
So I think I've rambled enough about bands. I could do that forever. You guys go.
This question is like always hard because I know sometimes there's probably this feeling that we all have as sort of like, connoisseurs of ska, that we sort of want to like get on the new thing before it's discovered and stuff like that. But it's like we've talked about, it's just really hard because there's so much new stuff and so much being reported on it. But one of the bands that has recently caught my attention is Joystick, and they're a ska punk band out of New Orleans, and they're really good. Their 2017 album is really good. Just a lot of ska punk, kind of like the best parts of the 90s, but also like, just a little bit more aggressive.
Nice.
As sort of the ska punk sound has been moving towards.
Great
I
party.
do know that they're working on a full-length album for this year at some point, coming out, and and then I kind of had to go with like a band that has been around for a while, and I know people know who they are, but I just feel like, especially out of the like Orange County scene, like in Orange County, they get enough attention. I think they get a good amount of attention, but outside of the Orange County scene, like Hooray for Our Side, I think is like a really, really, really good band. Their 2015 album Overture is really great. Their 2019 EP, Everybody Love Everybody, is just really great. Good ska punk, soulful singing, and just a really good songwriters in that band. And I would like to see more people sort of, listening to them. So I feel like they need a little bit more of attention.
They've reached over here to my ears purely because it's a couple of old members of Chase Long Beach, isn't it? It's,
Correct.
Yeah, so a couple of those guys are in it. I was talking to Karen about this a couple of days ago, actually. But RJ.
Okay, I got like a handful because I'm always, I just go onto Bandcamp, hit that ska and tag and see the most recent releases. That's how I find bands for my show more than anything.
Sure.
I played her recently on the show. She goes by the name Tape Girl online. She just does stuff in her bedroom. Yeah, all her songs just get so like stuck in my head. Like her latest single,
Cool.
Shoveling. I just keep
Shoveling rules. Shoveling is so good. Oh my god, I love that song.
So I'm a big fan of hers lately. Then there's this band from Canada, Mitch Girillo. He's been around for a long time. I mentioned him already. He used to be with Chris Murray and King Apparatus, but in the last few years, he started a new band called King Kong 4. And it's really doing that like power pop ska thing, and I found that is like really my Venn diagram overlap of two of my favorite things really coming together. So I got King Kong 4 doing that. Catbite, whom I love, is also doing that same thing. They're getting a lot of press, and they deserve it too. And then if I want to go a little bit international around Beefy's way, I'm a real big fan of Alice Spina, and they're not getting too much love. It seems like they don't get as much, people talk about them as much, and I find them just delightful and fun and energetic and just kind as hell. So, that would be my bands to check out if you haven't already.
Oh, they're fantastic. The two girls are absolutely brilliant and absolutely love doing what they do as well. And it's a tough scene here. It really is. And for those guys to keep pushing and working their way into the States and building up some links and getting some supports when decent bands come over, it's they'll be the first choice of main support when we finally get some international acts back. That's for sure.
Nice.
So there's another Australian band, old school, weirdly enough, like a two-tone band called the Isolators that are starting to put out some good stuff. They're from Adelaide. Really, really nice stuff. They did a big live session that they turned into an album last year, which is really, really good, and that's it kind of surprised me actually. But in the States, weirdly, two bands that you don't hear about. They've got zero following. Upstate New York, Turkey Blaster Omega. really only got a couple of tunes, really like them. In Texas, Nuclear Nation put out a few tunes, very similar to Bad Operation, different vibe, bit more punky. Over in the UK, Filthy Militia. Why don't they get any coverage?
I just discovered them like this week, so I don't know how I missed out on this long.
Their sax player's just come back. Their sax player's been out in Australia for a couple of years teaching, I think.
I mean, we've already mentioned there's bands, you turn around, and all of a sudden there's a new band, new tune. I don't like the fourth wave term. I want to push this forthcoming. The forthcoming of, fourth wave ska. Forthcoming, it's forthcoming. Yeah. The undiscovered forthcoming, by the way. Yeah.
Nice.
But you can't rest for a minute because the Interrupters came out of nowhere, and look at what they've done all of a sudden. So the scene, as we all know, is just building and building and building, and you're just going to see this 90s-esque revival of bands coming out of nowhere, which is great. Oh, Voluntary Hazing, by the way, as well. I'm a big fan of what those guys are doing. They were a marching band that have kind of decided, we've got loads of horns, what are we going to do?
Which is how isn't that how loads of American ska punk bands find their horn sections? Like the school band.
Pretty much. I think it was a joke in this old Midwest ska band called Greenhouse, in their CD is like how to recruit horn players for a ska band. Start your punk band and then go tell the kids in the jazz band that it's cooler than jazz.
Most of the horn players that I know of out here in Orange County, they all came from band. Every single one of them.
Yeah. So you guys, obviously, like what we've just been talking about with discovering new bands, I would imagine it's a big part of it. But what got you guys started in radio and podcasts?
I was actually, why do I like to talk. So I like the sound of my own voice. About 5, 6 years ago, I was doing a completely different podcast that had nothing to do with music. And after, 4 or 5 years, about 4 years into doing that, I started having people that were in the Orange County ska scene on my podcast, sort of like just meeting friends because of going to shows and stuff like that. And they would come on this other podcast I have. And finally, my wife was like, you should start a ska podcast. And I was like, I don't know. I don't like... I knew my own limitations were like ska punk of the 90s. Like that's just where my interest in ska, the bands I was following and stuff like that. Like I was into newer Orange County bands, but not much outside of that at the time. And so I was hesitant. And then finally I started, I sort of went for it and asked one person. Actually, Tara from Half Past Two was the first person I went to be a co-host, and we kicked it around for about a month, and then she ultimately backed out because she just had her second kid at the time and just was, didn't want to add too much to her schedule. And then when On the Upbeat started going, I actually had Aaron Bertram, the trumpet player for Suburban Legends. He was my co-host for about 20 episodes, and then the pandemic happened, and Aaron, his whole livelihood, how he was making money was live entertainment, not only with Suburban Legends, but working at Disneyland out here in California. And he also did a kids music act, which went into schools and did live shows. And when the pandemic happened, all of that went away. Every single job he had for income went away. So the podcast sort of went on his back burner, we paused, and then eventually through talking with Aaron was understanding that I just kind of wanted to move forward. And that's how RJ came into the picture. But I think the general answer to your question is, human connection, and that's what we've even needed in 2020, but it's also the community that comes out of just talking about a subject that we all like, and not just the music itself, but the social issues are related around that music scene, and just connecting with people and just feeling like you're part of something, and something that's both engaging and fun. So yeah. it's kind of why I got into it and stay in it.
I went to school for radio and television,
cool.
and it's always been something I was interested in doing. I ended up working in TV in the Midwest, which is where I met my wife, and then we eventually moved out to California. Part of who I was back then was always the guy making mixtapes for all my friends. So like, check out these bands, check out these local bands, because I would drive. I lived in Peoria, Illinois, which is the center of the state. I'd drive all the way up to Wisconsin, over to Indiana, over to Iowa, to St. Louis, see bands in Chicago, see bands at the bottom of the state. I was always finding new bands, wanted to share them with my friends. So I moved out to California, me and my wife. We did a podcast for a while about reality TV for a few years. And on the side, I just started doing twice monthly this like little ska mixtape show, 23 Minutes of Ska. And then when we quit doing our one podcast, I just, worked up to doing it weekly for 23 minutes. And the idea is always share bands, let people know about cool ska bands. And like I said earlier, it just, I don't want to repeat myself. So I've been trending more and more, newer and newer as I've been going on. And it's a good place. I had someone the other day say, hey, how about for us old timers, you play some more 90s stuff? And I'm like, listen, I'm in my 40s. I am an old timer. I don't know if I want to go back. I don't need to retread something. We've played those all songs all to death. Like, come on, let's listen to the new cats. So that's how I kind of got in. It's all about promotion. And then when Matt gave me the opportunity to join on the Upbeat, I jumped at that because I found that some people like my mixtape type show, but then other people more like to do the interview type shows. And it would work because, I have contacts, so I can bring people in that Matt might not have contacts with. So that helps there. I get to be my weird self, which Matt thankfully doesn't hate. And which I think is kind of alienating because I was trying to do this my own interview show called The Ska After Party, and it just never got the listenership that 23 Minutes of Ska would. Like, they were on the same RSS feed, and the download would be drastically different. So I was like, I am not a great interviewer. I'm a great co-host. Oh, and Matt needs a co-host. I think this would be a great fit. And I think it is. I enjoy the show I do with Matt. I hope Matt agrees. But yeah, so I kind of fell into that, and I love doing 2 fantastic shows a week centered around ska with my buddy Matt, and all by myself too. It's my therapy. I sit around for several hours each week just mixing stuff in Audacity. That doesn't work. Move that song the next week. We'll see if it works then. What can I do to fill this hole? It's like a puzzle piece each week.
Yeah, because you've got to get that time right as well, I suppose.
I know. Someone else, I forget who, somebody was in a band, I forget who it was, but they were just like, you can go over 23 minutes. If it's 23 minutes and 4 seconds, no one's going to care. Even 23 minutes and 30 seconds, they're like, I'd care. I would care.
And by the way, next time someone tells you play something from the 90s ska, just tell them, go listen to K-Rock. Because K-Rock is still I swear, so I don't really listen to the radio anymore, but I listen to it. K-Rock is still on my radio. So when I hook up my phone to listen to the music on my phone, and it's on K-Rock. Going in, it was, going someplace, it was sublime, and
it's
then
always sublime.
After driving somewhere for a little bit, and then getting back in the car on was No Doubt. So, and I'm like,
ooh, switching it up, saying No Doubt.
Oh yeah, and I'm just like, they're still playing the same stuff, and I'm like, I don't get why those stations aren't picking up on even the bands now that sound like those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's plenty of bands out there that are doing, new things and interesting things that sort of have a 90s ska punk sound. And I don't get why those radio stations are like, no, we're still going to listen. We're still going to play the same ones we've been playing. Let's play Santeria again.
Yeah.
So for me, my story is a little convoluted, so I'll do the quick version of it. I also went to school for, not exactly radio, but for journalism. But where I went to school at University of North Texas, marketing is a part.
Green.
Oh yes, yes.
I went
Club.
to the University of North. Yeah, I went there as well. So just to kind of throw a mix
amazing.
in there.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
That's awesome.
So marketing is a part of journalism there. So I had to study like how to write for a newspaper, how to do reporting, but I also like learned how to write marketing copy and learn design and stuff at the same time. So after that, I went into working at like ad agencies and marketing agencies, and I ran my own for a while as well. But while I'm like doing all that, going to college, even before that, I'm playing in bands, ska bands and other types of bands. And then in college, I started DJing. And by the time I was like supposed to be a professional, I'm working at this ad agency, but like 4 nights a week, I'm playing DJ gigs. And it was exhausting. So I eventually kind of stopped playing gigs and just was like working. But when I started running my own company, I was desperately trying to find a way to bring back like the DIY influence that I had. And so I started looking at like this podcast thing, and I had kind of messed around doing a gaming podcast with a friend in like 2008, but we had to like hand code the RSS feed, and it was like a freaking nightmare. And we only made like 5 or 6 episodes. But so, like 2016, I guess, 2016, it's obviously a lot easier at that point. And so I started trying to like do stuff under the company. So I did like one with some people that worked for me, about 1-star reviews where we'd like read them and just like laugh about them and stuff. And we just kind of like did things like that. But then when I moved out of the company, I wanted to just do podcasts. So I started like doing podcasts for other people. So my main day job is I do like corporate podcasts. So for like lawyers or programmers or whatever company, and they hire me to edit the episodes and stuff. But so I've been doing that for 3 years. It's like my full-time freelance, but that's my main thing. But I'm always still like sending people bands, showing my wife stuff, like whatever. And they're always telling me like, you need an outlet. So pandemic hits, and basically all my clients either paused or let me go because of like, honestly, like a show about like legal stuff. Like their downloads aren't very high, but they can use those to generate leads. So they don't care about the numbers, but it's an easy thing for them to cut out of their budget. So I had like no work. And so it was like, well, I guess it's time to actually make this idea I've had for years happen. And so I started planning it and eventually launched it. So that's that.
Well, my story is a little bit weird and different again. So in 2015, I created this project called 365 Days of Sport. Went around the world watching different sports every day. The idea was going to see 365 different sports in 365 days. So off the back of that, when that got finished, I ended up doing loads of media around Melbourne, Australia, around the world, actually. So I got called into this sports station, it's the biggest sports station in Australia. I was doing like spots, quite a few days, and a permanent spot on a Sunday. So when they came back off the break, they always used to ask, what music did you want? So I was, we'll get the Boss Tones, we'll do Madness, we'll do the specials. And the guy that was the producer of this show said, are you a big ska fan? I went, yeah, well, I'm a child of the 70s in Britain. I grew up with the specials, Bad Manners, Madness, Selector, everything. And I've always been a massive fan. And he said, I help out at a radio station. We used to have a ska show, but it got, the guy that was doing it quit. So I really want a ska show back on the station. Do you want to do it? And I went, yeah, why not? And then 2 weeks later, without any training or anything, I was live on air. Like, there you go. You've got a Thursday drive time slot, 2 hours of ska, go for it. And it's like, really? Okay, let's do this. And I had 10 minutes of training on the panel. Never thought about this before. And it was like, what am I going to do? And it was thrown in the deep end, and I've kind of made it my own. And yeah, I've got a fairly, decent reputation for doing a fairly decent show nowadays. But that's how I got into it. But, like I said, I've always been into the scene, always been a punk rocker. So yeah, just being able to share what I call the gospel of ska is my ethos nowadays.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, I love it. I love it every week without fail.
I think it really comes across in all of your shows, like that you guys love, really like truly love the music, like to the core. Like I enjoy listening to all of your shows, and yeah, for that exact reason, you guys have the same passion I feel. Yeah, I think it's really awesome. But
which one do you like the best?
Well, that's like asking me which is my favourite child. You're all awesome. I listen to all of you in sort of different ways. Like I tend to listen to Chris's show when I'm exercising. I tend to listen to On the Upbeat when I'm at the moment I'm trying to get fit again, and so I listen to it when I'm walking because I tend to walk quite a while. Beefy's show is usually at a weird time of night, so I'm usually actually sat doing admin stuff when I listen to Beefy's show. And 23 minutes fits in beautifully, so I kind of just listen to that at any point. I can really. It's nice. I genuinely thought about it a fair few weeks ago. I realised it was, I mean, obviously it's in the name, but I never thought about how it is 23 minutes exactly and how you must have to compile that. And I'm the same. I'd be so, like, if it was a second over, I'd be mortified. I'd be like, right, I've got to make it like really right. So yeah, absolute respect on that front.
Sometimes it really bothers me how things podcast RSS feeders read the time, because in Audacity it is 23 minutes on the dot, and sometimes it reads it as 23, but sometimes it's 22:59 or 23:01. It's like, it's 23. Trust me, I make sure of it.
You're like, that's it. I'm re-uploading it.
I know with our day show, I know if I've got to drive somewhere that's about 20 to 25 minutes, I say, okay, that works perfectly for me. I'm like you, Matt. I never listen to radio anymore. Australian radio is awful. It is horrendous. There's a rock station that only play Foo Fighters and AC/DC, and that's all they ever play. All the other pop stations are just mumble rap and rubbish. So it's pointless me putting the radio on anymore. So yeah, I podcast, I listen to the shows, everything else. So that's what I do now. Is I couldn't even tell you the last time I even listened to radio, apart from my own show, obviously.
It's funny, like here in the UK, like you guys saying, like on K-Rock you had Sublime played, and no doubt that we don't even have that here. Like it's probably the same as in Australia. Like you get Foo Fighters and things like that on main radio, but we don't have a rock station per se. You've got Krang radio.
Well, come to California, that's all we play. That's all the radio plays here. Is Sublime and No Doubt and that Missing a Penis song from the 90s, like Detachable Penis. You remember that song?
Oh, yeah.
That still gets played. I don't know why. Still does.
And we also play a whole Foo Fighters, too.
Yeah, they do. And Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, yeah, because it's California, yeah.
I remember that from driving around in America, actually. It was kind of, it's pretty much Red Hot Chili Peppers all the way till we got to the middle. Then it was just like 5 country stations.
Pretty much.
That's where I grew up, yeah.
We kind of, actually, after a while, we grew to love it. Because the only thing we didn't have any CDs. We just had a USB stick that I think had the first 2 volumes of What Do You Know About Ska Punk on, or maybe the first one. And once we'd gone through that a few times, we were like, all right, country it is. And then you kind of would be trying to guess the lyric, whether it's going to be truck or gun or beer or someone adultery, what I want to be above. But actually, it was also well produced. It actually became Air Candy, and then just got used to it. So just to finish up then, guys. So for anyone that would rather than become, come up to be a musician and following something like I'm doing. For those that want to come up and start a podcast or a career in radio, or they want to play Red Hot Chili Peppers in any of the countries we live in, what would be your recommendations to them? What would be your advice to anyone starting out?
As far as doing a podcast, my big thing is just try to be consistent. If the big thing with 23 Minutes of Ska and Pew, I used to put it out on the 1st and the 11th and the 23rd of each month, and people just never twigged onto that. And when I started doing it every Thursday, the listenership blew up. People like that consistency. They can count on it. I've gotten so many emails like, this is what I listen to when I'm driving to school on Friday morning or driving to work. It's just, and it becomes like something they can rely on, and that makes them want to talk about it more. I have a guy who consistently shares it on Facebook every single week without fail. So it's really, consistency is a big thing. I think you start out with whatever equipment you can afford to do a podcast, but try to get consistent, and if you can, get better equipment so you can keep getting the show better and better. But if they know where to look for you and when to look for you, you've already solved a lot of the problems of getting listeners.
I think the magic rules of anyone doing a podcast is, number one, do it because you want to do it, not because you want numbers or you want to make money out of it. 2, be true to yourself. 3, don't ever expect anyone to listen. That's the bottom line. But I think rule 4 as well is, if you commit to it, make sure you do it week in, week out, or if you're going to do one a month, make sure you do one a month. And if you release it every time on time, because it's the quickest way to lose listeners, because people think, oh, they've gone. Podcasts come and go all the time. And unless you're there week in, week out, you will fall into the ether like everyone else says.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you, to be honest, a lot of what I do on my show here is the opposite of what I tell my clients. Everything you're saying, consistency and all that, are absolutely things that I tell them. But, we're trying to create like this like professional show with them, and, don't swear and don't, try to be like the best version of yourself. And like, I do that, but I'm also like honest about what's going on in life. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't like swear when I talk about it. If I'm excited about a track, I'm going to be like, fuck yeah, this track fucking rules. Like, I'm not going to pretend that that's not how I talk, because especially if they're saying that type of stuff in the songs. So, don't follow that stuff. Just be yourself. I think that's important. Like, if you want to, I guess it's a little different on like 23 Mins, but like if you're talking at all, you can't pretend to be someone that you're not going to be. It'll fall through the cracks at some point, and the audience won't buy it. So if they don't buy that you don't like what you're playing or what you're talking about, if you're not doing a ska show, they're big out. Doesn't matter if they know when it's coming, they'll bail if they don't buy you, basically. Because as much as I want it to be about the bands and not me, it's still about me. Like, they're still like they're still getting to know me and my taste and the bands that I'm choosing to talk to or play. So be yourself is the biggest thing, I would say. The equipment doesn't matter. Like, they're going on a journey with you. You can upgrade over time. You be upfront with what's going on, and they'll be stoked. It's like you're growing, so just be yourself.
Yeah, I remember when I started like looking into like doing a podcast, and one of the things they said is like, be consistent and only put out your best work. And those made sense, especially the be consistent thing. Because obviously if you want to keep someone's attention, like if you're constantly changing just like TV shows, like if they're constantly changing when they're coming out, like no one knows when it's going to be on or whatever. So it's that same idea, but it was the thing that like only put out your best episode. And, I hate editing. So there are times when I kind of just sit back and go, you know what? Like, yeah, I kind of messed up the band's name, or I forgot the band's name. And yeah, I could probably go back and like re-edit me saying it correctly. But to me, that ends up feeling fake and dishonest. That's just me. Like, I mean, obviously I don't want to insult the bands by accidentally forgetting their name or blanking on their name for a second, or anything else like that, messing up someone's name, forgetting a song title, whatever. Like, that's not my intent. And if I need to, of course I will. If I think it sort of hurts the band, of course I will. But from like me just looking like a human who makes mistakes, like that's kind of just important to me, of being authentic. So as long as it's not sort of hurting the band, or getting information out for the band, as I'm fine looking like the fool for a moment. If it gets a laugh or something, like that's okay. Yeah. Like, I'm fine being the court jester for a minute of just like, hey, I'm stupid. I messed up your name and I'm sorry. But I do, of course, we strive to be professional and honor what bands do and their time for coming on the show, of course. but like, obviously I have edited for time if I felt like that was the thing, or if a conversation just kept going round and round and whatever. But be authentic, be yourself. But don't start a ska podcast. We've got enough of those.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I'm saying is I leave mistakes in for sure. For my clients, I would fix things like you're talking about. Sure. I cut out every single I just did one a second ago, and I leave, not all of them, but I do leave some in the show. I try to make the band sound a little bit better, like if someone says a lot of ums or crush words or something. Because I do spend a lot of time on editing, but if there's a good moment where I mess up or they mess up or whatever, I, of course, leave those things in because I try to be what I call fun professional, where I edit things and make it sound good, but I'm not going to pretend that we aren't all like doing this like fun music for fun and we're not making any money. So of course we goofed around and did stupid stuff sometimes, and that stuff's going to stay in there that I would completely cut from my professional stuff. So
yeah, I think it would happen in a conversation you would have anyway, and like a podcast or a radio show, or even when we do an album, like it's kind of a conversation. And part of that authenticity you're saying is, you would you would mess up and sort of correct yourself. And sometimes when you take it out, I definitely reiterate what you said about consistency. When I was doing the vlogs, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing from the start. Probably still don't, in all honesty. But it was only when I went to weekly that I realised, the consistency built a community. It was when I started to notice people would message, like, I think I took a week off and I had messages like, oh, there's no pod, and it wasn't one person, it was a few people, and I was like, oh, people are paying attention. That's kind of cool, and that's only because of that consistency. So I think that's a really important point you all make, actually.
I don't say that for some reason I'm taking a week off. I get like 3 or 4 messages by Thursday afternoon being like, hey, well, what, are you okay? Like, what's going on with the show? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. So, like, when anything's going on and I got to skip a week, I'll usually put on Twitter, Instagram, and on the Facebook, like, hey, this came up. I wasn't able to do the show. And on the Upbeat, Matt always makes sure to announce ahead of time so people know not to expect and to know when to tune back in. I think you mentioned something, Chris, about how it's a little bit probably different for me. I don't have to fake being excited for bands. When I started the show, I didn't want to talk. Like, I very much didn't want to. I wanted to be in the background as much as possible. Because the show is not about the personality of RJ, which it could easily be because I'm loud and annoying. Matt can attest to that. But more and more, like, I think when I have played songs, just so it's like, because a band asked me, like, hey, could you play the song out? I think my audience can always tell if I'm playing something I'm not excited about, because after 10 years, even without me saying anything, I think they can pick up, oh, he's just playing that because he got, like, some promo. So they're like, here, help me push my album, and he thought I'd do him a favor. So I'm really bad at even doing that anymore, and I probably have fallen off a couple lists of somebody to share singles with because I don't play everything that gets sent to me. And I'm also really bad at replying, as Matt can also attest to. It's not just Matt. It's literally everybody. I'm the worst. Like, yeah.
I've been called the worst and many worse things already by bands sending me stuff, and I'm like, I'm not gonna play that. Like, this song is cool, or maybe it's not cool in some cases, but I'm just not. I'm sorry, like it doesn't fit. Like, I have 4 interviews for the next month, and I'm not gonna have time for a mix thing. Or like, hey, this is supposed to be international, and you have other shows playing you. And, it just might not fit. I'm sorry, it's just not. I have to keep some kind of semblance, or I'll never ever get some of these things done.
For sure.
Not semblance, I guess some kind of like filter. But I've been called a gatekeeper a number of times, but I'm trying not to. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not all going to work. It's just not all going to fit.
Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't.
Well, I was just going to say, like, that's sort of been the most uncomfortable part of this is, bands reaching out. They, especially if you don't already know who they are. and they give you stuff to listen to, or make you aware of them, and you listen to them on Spotify or whatever. And they kind of want you to play their stuff. And I basically usually now respond and just say, we'll take a listen. We'll let you know if we, play it. I can't. And then mostly my answer is I can't guarantee we'll play it. Well, I'll take a listen. I absolutely listen to everything someone sends me. I absolutely do. There's not a band that I haven't. But I'm not going to guarantee right now, right in this moment, that I'm going to play it or have you on. But it is part of the reason why we created so many segments on the podcast and continue to do so that we can even play little clippets of songs and say, well, this fits this category and this fits this, and whether it's Ska Around the World for an international band, or it's like a Ska pick of the week, or maybe we're talking about some sort of like subgenre in ska, and we can play this clip. And so that was intentional to be able to play as much, from the spectrum as we can. But yeah, it's not all going to fit. And, I try to be, I have had to tell someone, while this song is ska, the rest of your stuff is not. So because they were very clear, they wanted me to share it, even if it was just on social media. And I was like, I just can't, because it's not like this part is kind of ska, but the other 5 songs in your EP aren't. So it's like, sorry. And I hope people don't, have hurt feelings. Most people respond fine, but, you never know what they're saying behind our backs.
Sure.
Which I'm not really worried about, though.
You've got to look after your own brand as well. That's the big thing. Sure. You can't be whacking bands in that don't fit. I do a punk rock kind of section. I do a cover section in the show, which we kind of throw stuff around that can be a bit varied. There is some punk rock that probably doesn't fit what I'm trying to do or what the ethos I'm pushing out there. But at the end of the day, if the bands don't fit, you just got to tell them. And there are a load of bands that get in touch with me that just aren't ska bands, or, let's face it, there's some pretty pig awful stuff out there as well that I just won't play. It's not very good. You just got to jump on, the Ska Reddit and see some of the shit that's there. It's just not broadcastable. It really isn't. So, I don't think they get offended. You just got to be honest.
For sure.
Yeah, they send you a song that's a perfectly good song, but it's not a ska song yet. And then they release their album, and the album has a lot of ska on it. And you say to yourself, Andy, why didn't you send me one of your ska songs?
We did have that conversation.
What did I send you?
You sent me Black and Blue. That's just
okay.
Like punk with horns. And I was just like,
what
fucking
what
love
a
this track. I love it. It is not ska enough for my shelf, son of a bitch. And then so when the album came out, I was like, snapped up the album, and I okay, there's 80% of this. God damn it is.
See, we all do it. We all do it.
Andy's album as well. The second kind of single after Black and Blue was a kind of little folky acoustic number, and I thought, the whole album's ska enough. Why don't we play? I can't even remember the name of the tune. Things Change, is it called?
Oh, the fakey one, yeah.
Yeah, I played it anyway because it kind of fitted in with the ska umbrella.
It's got a lot of the ska musicians on it.
Like Matt was saying earlier, with the one ska song on an EP full of not ska. Now I'm just okay, maybe I can find a place for Black and Blue. But at the time, that's all I know. And punk bands with horn players that don't even try to be ska send me stuff all the time. And while I like it, because I like pop punk with horns, I love fucking horns. It's just not what I'm going for on the show. And so it's just one of these cool bands that I love that I'll never play. And then the album came out, and I'm like, I'm a fucking dick.
That's why I never tell anyone no. I never tell anyone explicitly no. I just say, I'll listen to it, and I'll reach back. If we like it,
I just don't respond, and I'm shocked that Andy still wants to talk to me at all.
Oh, we're all inclusive here. No, it's like it's a prime example actually that like no matter where we think we are in our head, like as musicians, like you know whether we think like we feel like we've got PR sussed or we're just starting out, that marketing yourself can be kind of hard, especially with something if you're crossing genres. You know, like ska punk bands are crossing two pretty big genres, and there's so many subsections there anyway. Let alone our album, which is God knows how many genres. So like when you're sending it out, it's kind of like you're always trying to kind of fathom what you think that person's going to want to hear, so they play it. And yeah, I think we all missed the boat now and then. And it makes a good point. I think we like if there's one thing bands could learn to do better, including us, as we've just discussed, is really think about what you're sending. I don't know why I said Black and Blue. Can't remember now.
It was, at the time,
it was pretty early. I don't think.
Yeah, it was the first single you'd put out.
And, yeah, of course. Yeah, so we put it out as a promo song. When I first started the project, I was reaching out to people, and people were like, "What the fuck are you? I don't know what you're talking about." So I was like, "We're gonna have to put a song out so people like get it." Because I don't think, because you know, this is way before collabs were really prevalent like they are now, and like, yeah, I don't think anyone really got it. Plus, I'm sure you've all experienced how bad I am at like making a sentence short. I just kind of turn it into 8 sentences. So like, I was like, I'm gonna have to put a song out, and then people get it, and that was it, and that was it did it. But yeah, it probably was back then thinking about it.
It's hard when I love the song and I'm like, this doesn't fit what I'm doing. And that song got so many plays off my iTunes because I threw it right in. I was like, son of a, I can't wait for this album to come out.
And then it took 4 years.
I just felt like a huge like jerk every time I listened to it and enjoyed it too. Like just absolutely.
Nah, man, you still enjoyed it. That's the main thing. And we got on there in the end. I clawed my way in, and you know we got in there.
Oh yeah, I heard the rest of the album. I got fucking songs for months now that I can throw into the show. It's awesome.
As long as they fit the time like you need. Yeah, it's all good. So guys, I actually didn't plan to talk about my album at all. So back on you guys. Just to finish up, is there anything? Let me give you guys all a minute each. Give me a plug. So what are you guys doing at the moment that you would want people to check out?
I mean, for On the Upbeat, we don't have anything particularly coming up that isn't what we normally do. Just make sure you check out On the Upbeat. We're on every podcast app you can think of. I know because I've checked. And, like us on Instagram, follow us there. We're on Twitter, all of the things, Facebook. It's all, and now on TikTok, which I hesitated towards doing, but I did it. RJ, you have to make a dance video soon.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's all at On the Upbeat Ska. You can find us at all the places with that handle.
So you can find every episode that I've ever done of 23 Minutes of Ska at 23ska.com, 23ska.com. You can find us on Apple, every place else that you can find podcasts, you can find it, but I have them all there. And on April 1st, I'm going to do an episode that will probably lose me listeners and get hate. So look out for that if this comes out before April 1st. If it comes out after, come back. It's still the same show, but I'm having fun for April Fool's Day because it's a Thursday and I can do that. I've earned it after 10 years.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah. Especially as it's the 1st of April. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
23 minutes of silence. Just confusable.
Yes.
Be like the most experimental podcast ever.
But it's 23 minutes exactly.
On the dot. Just dead air.
And you'll wait. People will wait too. They'll they won't wait because they can fast forward through it, you know. But back in the day when hidden tracks were a thing, like on CDs, like I would wait. I would just like, it's still going. Still going. One time I fell asleep, and then, while listening to an album, and then 43 minutes, this really loud metal thing started. I found glory in it. Yes, and I woke up wanting to punch someone. But yeah, good times.
It's so hard, because they're just not a thing anymore. because things go digitally. It kind of makes a mess of a song digitally, but like they're so much fun. Although you'd always like fast forward it in the car and then overshoot it, and then you'd spend just as long as the gap going back and finding the right point.
Right.
And the best hidden tracks are the ones that were hidden before the first track, so you'd have to rewind from the first track back.
Yeah.
I've got like maybe 3 CDs that I know have that, and I'm always like, should I try some of my other ones?
Puppet used
I don't have the time.
You can check out the Ska Show with Beefy. It's on live every Tuesday night in Australia, which is Tuesday early morning and Tuesday lunchtime in the UK. We're on Facebook, the Ska Show with Beefy. We're on Twitter at Beefy Ska Show. I don't do Instagram for the show. I don't do TikTok. People keep asking me to do Twitch. Mate, I am struggling with Facebook and Twitter, let alone everything else. So we do 2 Ska Pods every week. Hashtag Ska Pod. I've made that trend, I reckon. So 2 shows every week, and possibly a third if I get time or the inclination to actually do it. But we've talked about the fact that we don't make any money off these shows. I do it in the studio. I actually have to pay to do my radio show. So probably costs about $1,000 for me to do the show every year. And what I did this year, because I lost my job just when COVID hit, and it ain't going very well, looking for a new job at the minute. So I put out a compilation album, 64 bands from all 4 corners of the globe. They all gave me tracks. Andy B did. In fact, we dredged up an old Upbeat All-Stars track to put on it as well, which is fantastic. 64 tracks, costed $12. The Ska Show with beefy.bandcamp.com/releases or something. Just get it, support the show. I would really appreciate it, and I can't thank the bands enough for helping me out and supporting me with that, because without that, I think, actually, unbelievably, in the last 24 hours, we just hit the $1,000 mark as well. So that's paid for the show for the next 12 months. So I really, really appreciate it with that. So, yeah, brilliant. Love it.
Yay, that's rad.
Okay, so first of all, go support Beefy. That would be extremely helpful. I don't know if I'm... Yeah, that's right. Go Mean Green, for sure. So for me, you just search for Ska Punk International. The show is only on Spotify right now, but if you search, you'll find it. That's because I embed the songs directly in the episodes. However, by the time this comes out, the interview episodes will be on all the other podcast platforms, just without the songs in them. Because, I'm missing listeners, so I might as well do it. I just got to get around to doing all the editing, right? But that's fine. I'll have it done by the time this comes. So you will be able to find it if you just search Ska Punk International everywhere. If you search also on any of the social platforms, you'll find me there. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. TikTok is kind of blown up for me. I'm posting stuff there a lot. So definitely find me there. I've got a lot of dancing videos. So I'm just waiting for you guys to join. But I did see you there, Matt. I did follow you back and saw you doing some dancing. So props on that one. Let's see, what else? Just search for us anywhere. You'll find me. Bands keep sending me stuff, even though I might tell you don't fit. For me, what's good is subjective. Like someone out there probably likes it. I'm not as worried about what's fitting. I want bands to send me stuff. I just focus mostly on international stuff. So I might not have time to play you for a long time, or I don't know. But please keep sending me stuff. I want that to happen. You can send that on any of the social platforms. That's totally cool. And then last thing, I am launching a distro, bringing international bands with their vinyl stuff over here, so that you can get vinyl from bands from other countries cheaper than having to do all that massive shipping costs. And then also there'll be some tape releases, and those will all go to charity. And so I'm really excited about that. So yeah, that should be just awesome. At skapunkinternational.com. Switching from just podcasts, that'll promote that stuff, but be distro and podcasts. So that is launching sometime in the near future.
That's awesome. Woo. Nice one. Well, guys, thank you so much. It's been really nice to do one of these, and I love the fact that people will interview me about and show interest in the album I've done. But it's so nice to not talk about it for once and to grill you guys. So it's been really enjoyable. For anyone that's watching, I'll put links for all these guys. Shall I share emails for you guys so people can send bands can send stuff into you guys? That'd be rad. We can keep playing new bands and sharing the ska love. Rad. All right. Peace out, guys. It's been lovely.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been good.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.